Hi, Ava. Good to see you. You doing all right? Am I embarrassing you right now? I'm so sorry. Hey, my name is Matt. So glad to have you here for high school. I also want to give a shout out right here to these girls here on the front row. You guys are here every single week. That's awesome. Like, it's your spot. That got a little bit of an applause. Are you guys there every week too? So here's the thing. So there's groups that kind of have their spot on the front row for J High too. And so I'm really curious to see what happens Wednesday night when you guys come into the same room and everybody's fighting over. I feel like you guys are going to win over seniority, right? Like you're bigger. Okay, there's some big middle school kids though. So I'm not saying, Pip, that I'm doubting your skills, but maybe just do a couple push-ups before Wednesday night is all I'm saying. Hey, now that I'm done throwing shade at Pip, so glad to have you guys here. We have been in this series called Choose Your Own Adventure. This is week 3 of it. And every single week we've been talking about this full life, this joy that God has for us, this adventure. And I love that it's just an aspect of what Jesus came for us to have. It's adventure, it's purpose, it's significance, it's community. It's all these things that God wants to add to our life. And one thing that brings me a lot of joy in community is I don't actually have to follow any meme accounts because being friends with Jadeson means I get memes curated to me. If you don't know who Jadeson is, wave in the back there, Jadeson. He loves to just send me memes, and he's batting pretty high. I would say you're batting 900 with the memes that you send me that I go, yeah, that's actually funny. And so I don't actually have to follow any meme accounts because I just get them through Jadeson. And so because he sends me memes, mainly like church memes or like Jesus memes, my Explore page is like trying to figure out who I am. And so they're like always guessing on Instagram, like, I think he likes church memes. Let's send him church memes, you know? And then I don't know how they figured it out, but I'm a huge Office fan, so I get Office memes. Like my Explore page is just random now with like church memes and Office memes. That's like basically what I get. But anybody follow meme accounts? What's your favorite meme account? Okay, I heard a few. They're like, I can't say it. I see. I get it. It's church. That was smart. That was smart on your part. Yeah. Hey, the youth pastor set me up to cuss in church. I said it. No, I'm just kidding. I found these. Do you guys remember like when the expectation versus reality memes like started being a thing? You know, it was like the Amazon version versus like the Wish version or the Pinterest fails. I found a few of them that I thought were really funny with this expectation versus reality. Here's the first one. You ever notice this? Like you go to the ice cream truck. Anybody still go to the ice cream truck? Good. Enjoy it while you can. It's creepy if I do it now, if I don't go with my daughter. But you would see the picture. It looks amazing. And then you open that bad boy up and this thing would haunt your soul. Like this, something about the gumball eyeballs is just off. Like you just can't, like something's weird about that. And so that's an expectation versus reality. Do we have another one? Of course, I have to throw this in. Kevin's Chili, expectation versus reality. One of the best cold opens ever. Next one. Oh, I love this because every single brochure that you look at for college, it makes it look pristine and perfect. And so here's how the dorm room looks. But group leaders, how do you know? Like this is pretty much the reality of what it actually is to live in a dorm. Guys and girls. Girls, y'all nasty. I've seen some. Y'all nasty. Expectation versus reality. Next one. The SpongeBob cake. I don't even know how to. Like for real, these look like just McDonald's straws. You know what I mean? Like that's bad. Yeah, let's go to the next one. Oh no. Something. This looks like Hollywood Boulevard. You know where all the knockoff characters are? They don't know what to think. They're just like, I think you're Barney. I'm not sure. Next one. This is the last one. Oh, no, we got 2 more. Thomas the Train here. This is an old reference. This looks like Mr. Bill from SNL, if you ever remember. Yeah, it's pretty. Last one. They thought it would be magical. It'd be like Olaf, but then pinecone eyes. That's the villain. If you make that and it comes to life, that's the villain of Frozen right there. That is not Olaf. Here's my question. What do you do when reality hits your expectation? Like you have it built up in your head. You know it's going to be awesome. You know it's going to be amazing. And then it turns out that you bought tickets for the Fire Festival. Like, you know, like what do you do when expectation doesn't meet your reality. Have you ever just caught yourself just saying stuff like, no, this is not what I expected. It's not what I signed up for. This, maybe it's something that you go, this isn't fair, or I thought things would be different. We have these things that happen, like we're basically like a reality bomb goes off in our lives where one thing that we were excited about, one thing that we're like super like jazzed. People make fun of me when I use that, but I think jazzed is still cool. It's still relevant. We were super jazzed for it. And then we get into it and we go, this is just not, the reality is not what I expected here. I think we do that with our faith too. And I think in this series, we have to be cautious because we're talking about this full life, this adventurous life, this life full of the joy, peace, and satisfaction that Jesus came and died and was resurrected for us to have. And we can look at that expectation. We can look at that verse. We can talk about this. But for many of us, we're looking at a reality in our lives and we're going, man, my expectation, what I hear at church, what I read in my Bible, it doesn't match my reality. It doesn't match what I'm going through. It doesn't match the actual situation that I'm in. Maybe it's challenges to your faith. Maybe it's things that you don't even, like, you can't work them out. Like, you can't figure them out. You'll hear other Christians talk about this one issue, and they're so, like, strong and set in their beliefs, and you're like, man, I don't know where I am with that. I don't know how I feel about that. Or maybe it's the other extreme where you have friends that aren't believers, friends that don't believe what you believe, and they're asking you questions and they're going, do you believe this? Like what? Like, how could you believe this? And you're going, I don't know what I believe. And so this reality is I thought my friend group, my community would support me. I thought other Christians might support me, but the reality is I feel kind of alone. I feel kind of, I don't know what to do. I don't know. I'm kind of at a loss here. Maybe it's what's going on with your home life. Maybe something at home is happening to where you get super encouraged when you're out. You get super encouraged when you go to church, but then it's like you step back into another reality. You step back into something else, like a problem waiting for you. Maybe it's apathy. Maybe it's something like, like you got excited when Riley said camp is opening up because you remember how you felt at camp, and you just don't feel that way every day about your relationship with Jesus. It's just this like, yeah, I'm still a follower. Like, yeah, I see other people worshiping like this morning and they were like super into it. They're singing, they were lifting their hands, and it just wasn't like where I'm at. I just don't feel it. We have things that make our reality look at expectations, look at what we know to be true about God, look at what we know to like what we want to believe, and we go, I just don't know what to do about it. If you've ever felt that way, you get into this place where you go, I don't know what, like it's almost like you're in limbo. Like, do I keep believing that God has the full life for me, or do I like revert back? Like, do I go back? Because at least there, like, yeah, it was bad what I was doing, but at least I felt something. And so you're in this like temptation, this like limbo of like, who am I going to be? Because my reality is not hitting my expectation. It was really exciting at first, but I just don't feel as excited about it. And so I just want to show you what happens to Christians when they look at this verse in John 10:10, where it says, the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. I've come that they may have life and have it to the full. I want to show you what Christians typically do when they look at this verse, they look at the promise of God, and they go, I don't have that life that's to the full. So this is common coping methods that we have as Christians. What coping is it's how you deal with difficulty. It's how you deal with pain. It's how you cope it. It's basically how you treat it, how you medicate it. And so here's the first thing we do. We become cynical. It's a very common coping method is that you just kind of get, a big word to throw at it is you get disillusioned. You start hearing verses and you just like, the first thing you do is you question them. The first thing you do is you go, I don't know if I actually believe that. I don't know if that's actually for me. It might be great for you, Matt. I don't think it's for me because my reality is telling me different. And so what used to be super exciting has turned into disappointing, and now the temptation is resentment. It's resentment. It's like, I've been there, I've heard that, I know all that church message is about, and I don't know. I just don't know anymore. You start saying things like, that's how the world works, that's just how things are. And so the delight that you once had in following Jesus, it kind of turns into a duty. It kind of turns into something that you have to do. Not that you want to do it, it's like you just feel like you have to do it. The second thing that happens is that we start justifying sins. We start looking at our lives and going, man, I don't feel like I'm having much fun. I don't feel like this is really fun. I'm actually kind of stressed out. I don't know what to do about school. And so we start looking at things that used to help us and medicate that and help us forget and escape our problems. And so we start kind of reverting back to old things that we thought we left behind when we met Jesus. And so we start justifying these things. It's true that the first thing ever recorded in the Bible that the devil ever said was, did God really say? And so he's getting Adam and Eve right then and there to question God's promises, if his way is really worth it, if his way is really the right way. And so he's doing this thing, like the verse said, coming to steal, kill, and destroy. And it's starting by stealing your code of conduct, by stealing your character, by stealing your morals of you going, I don't know. I don't feel like God upheld his end of the deal. He didn't answer that prayer. And so maybe I shouldn't uphold my end of the deal. And so you start justifying some actions that you're doing that you know are wrong and harmful deep down, but you're just in this place where you're coping because of disappointment. The third thing we do is this. We give up. This is one of the saddest things, but it's true. People walk away from their faith. They take their ball and go home because they'll just go, this Jesus thing, I tried it and it's not for me. This church thing, it was a great season of my life, but I got into college and it's just not for me. It's just not working. And so they'll just literally give up because of disappointment, because of the reality pain, because of the problems that they're facing. And all three of these are super, super common. So if you look at that and you go, man, like I'm in trouble, I don't think there's anybody in this room that can't relate to feeling all three of these things, at least feeling wanting to do these things, at least feeling wanting to give up, at least wanting to become cynical, at least wanting to justify sins, if not justifying sins. We've all been there. Isn't it crazy that two things that you start believing when you're going through something? One, you're the only one going through it. And two, you're the only one that's ever gone through it. That's the things that we start believing that our difficulties tell us, is that I'm the only one and I'm the only one ever. And it's just not true. Do you know that there's people in history that got the credit for discovering or inventing something that they didn't actually invent? They just, for some reason, like it just becomes this common practice of spreading this, and it's actually not accurate to history. And so I just want to show you, because these are funny to me. Here's a couple examples of this. Pythagoras did not come up with the Pythagorean theorem. It's true. It's named after him, not his work. He didn't invent it. Here's another one. Michael Jackson did not invent the moonwalk. If you're going, who? Ask your parents. They'll tell you all about him. But he actually, it was a dance move long before him. He just did it one time on TV, and he made it popular. And so a lot of people think he invented the moonwalk. He didn't invent it. This one actually I struggled with for a bit, but I did some research. Google it on your own. Thomas Edison did not invent the light bulb. He perfected it, like he made it more cost effective, and he basically made the most like modern version up until that point. But there were people that were already working on this in other countries, and so he didn't actually invent or come up with this idea of going, I could bring light from electricity. He was basically standing on the shoulders of some other people that did some work. Here's another one. You might know this already, but if you don't, Christopher Columbus did not discover that the earth was round. By the time that he, sailed the ocean blue in 1492, the common belief in the world was already that the earth was round. And so he was actually doing what he was doing because people believed that. And so he was saying, I got to get to India, and maybe it's faster if I go west instead of east. And so he didn't discover the earth was round. He discovered America because he was trying to get to India, and they didn't know how long, how big the world was, how round it actually was. But they knew it was round, and so that's why he sailed west instead of east and discovered America. Here's my point. If you feel disillusioned, disappointed, if you feel like you're the only one, don't add to the history, don't add to this false belief that you discovered this, that you invented it. Christians have been dealing with this since day one because Christianity started in the Greco-Roman world. It started at a time where the values and beliefs that Christians believe, the world didn't value. They didn't even come close to the values that we have. And so where we value every single life, the Romans, they practiced infanticide. Basically, they would just, if somebody didn't want a baby, they would just leave it out. And Christians came along in the early church and just started adopting abandoned babies and caring for every single life. And they changed the world because they cared about Jesus' values, even though the world didn't care about those values. And so Christians were hearing this, especially Gentiles, people that didn't come up through the Jewish faith. They didn't know the scriptures. They didn't know the Old Testament. They didn't know anything. They just heard the good news of Jesus and said, that's it. That's what I've been searching for my whole life. I want some of that. And they immediately entered persecution. Not this, like, it got worse. It got even more spread wide as Nero, blamed Christians for the burning of Rome, and it became this practice of physical abuse and martyrdom. But at first, it was fighting the culture. It was the same stuff that you and I maybe go through with just like a little bit of some razzing and some verbal abuse and some, dude, why do you believe that? Like anybody in that time that was standing up and going, I'm not going to live for myself anymore. I'm actually going to live for something bigger. I'm going to live for someone else. Anybody that had that Greco-Roman culture would go, that's dumb. Like, why would you live for anything besides yourself? And so they were facing this, and they were getting in that same spot of going, like, I've heard the good news, and I believe that Jesus has got this full life, and I'm all in, but this world just seems out to get me. And so 1 Peter is this book that Peter writes because he can relate to it. Jesus was there every single time that he just faced all these problems, these difficulties, this disillusionment, the reality checks. And so Peter knows what it's like to struggle and to just still cling to Jesus. And so he writes to these Gentiles in 1 Peter saying, you got to keep going. There's hope for you. There's help for you here. Look at what he says in 1 Peter chapter 1. He says, so be truly glad. By the way, not always the best advice if your friend's going through something, just go be happy. Like it doesn't work, but Peter gets away with it here. There is a wonderful joy ahead, even though you must endure many trials for a little while. I want you to see, he's basically setting them up for a bigger perspective. Wonderful joy ahead, even though this is a little while. These trials will show that your faith is genuine. It's being tested as fire tests and purifies gold, though your faith is far more precious than mere gold. See, when someone's disappointed in how things turned out, they need a bigger perspective. They need to be reminded of the truth. They need to be reminded of those things that we forget so quickly because disappointment makes us see only past our nose. And so what is he doing? He's showing them two things. There's joy ahead. In other words, what you're going through right now, it won't last forever. And the other thing is he's saying that trials test and purify your faith. In other words, difficulties help us learn to rely on God. It helps us learn to rely on him. It helps us to just dig down deeper and go, God, I'll give you more of myself. I'll even rely on you more than I have before because I just need more of you. I can't get through my day right now without you. And so these difficulties, if we'll stop focusing on the difficulty and we'll look at what God might be up to in the difficulty, it actually produces something good. It produces something that God can use in our lives. And so basically his message through 1 Peter is Jesus suffered. He's worth suffering for, so keep going. If you were to boil down his message in 1 Peter to one word, you know what it would be? Faithfulness. Faithfulness. The ability to keep going, to keep clinging to Jesus when it's the last thing you want to do. When your reality is telling you no, when your apathy is telling you why, when the world around you is saying that's stupid, he's saying keep going because he's still worth it. Faithfulness. 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 Here's my point. Here's the whole reason for this message and what we'll talk about in small groups. The full life is actually built by faithfulness. It's won by Jesus, but the way that we produce more of the fullness in our life, the more joy, the more adventure, is actually built by this idea that I'm going to keep going even when I don't want to. It's an overwhelming message of the Bible, is that what's required of us is faithfulness. What's required of us is devotion. What's required of us is this ability to cling to him and rely on him even when it's not fun anymore. Because if we'll do that when it's not fun, the times that it does become fun are even more fun. The peace that you have is even deeper. The joy that you have is even deeper. If you can learn to weather the storm with Jesus, it will produce a fullness to your life like nothing else. I want to show you what this looks like because as you break down 1 Peter, there's a couple big things that you start jumping out at you about this faithfulness idea. So I want to show you three things that as you stay faithful, God promises these three things will happen in your life. Here's the first one. You drop weight. What I mean by this is it's an overwhelming evidence as he talks about testing and purifying. As like gold like has this dross, it has this stuff that's impure about it. What he's saying is that your faith, as it gets tested, there are things that are impure. There's things that drop off your life as you stay faithful, and so you start to drop weight. What's some of the weight you're carrying? It could be, man, I got this anger issue that I don't even know how to resolve. Like I can feel it welling up in me, and I can tell that I'm about to say something I'm going to regret, but I don't know how to stop it. It's a weight. Maybe it's bitterness. You just don't know how to forgive somebody in your family. You don't know how to forgive somebody on your team. And so this bitterness thing is this weight that keeps holding you down. Maybe you have a sin issue that you're just ashamed of, and you're like, man, I just thought I would be done with this. I just keep dealing with this in the dark. I just keep dealing with this by myself, and I'm just so ashamed, and I don't want anybody to know. And because I'm ashamed, I keep doing the sin. Because I keep doing the sin, I feel more shame, and you're caught in this shame-sin cycle. That's weight. So when you learn to be faithful, what's happening is you're learning to drop weight that weighs you down. You're learning to let go of the things of this world. You're learning to let go of those sin issues. You're learning to let go of those things that are holding you back from the full life in him. So you learn to drop weight. The second thing is you gain wisdom. As you stay faithful, as you keep going, as you keep holding on to Jesus, your perspective changes. And so you're able to face a difficulty, face a problem, face a trial in your life, and you're like, you know what? God got me through the last one. That one I thought, like, there's no way. Maybe he can get me through this one too. And so wisdom starts getting added to your life where you're able to just have a bigger perspective on things. In other words, your highs aren't as high and your lows aren't as low. When you have a good moment, it doesn't make you feel as invincible. When you have a bad moment, it doesn't make you feel as insecure. You start leveling out and you go, no matter what, good or bad, God's got me. You gain wisdom. The third thing that faithfulness does is this. You redefine what's worthwhile. A lot of these difficulties that I've learned, maybe it's not for you, but for me, a lot of them just stem from my own selfishness. I didn't get it how I wanted to get it. I didn't get the recognition that I thought I deserved. Me. And what I've learned with this faithfulness thing is that I've learned to let go of some of those things that I shouldn't value in the first place. In other words, hopefully what's happening through faithfulness is I'm starting to love what God loves. That's people. Man, I would hate to get so stuck in my problems that I forget to love on the thing that God calls me to love, which is people. The only eternal thing I encounter every single day is other people. And so if I can learn to love what God loves in my difficulties, man, I'll start valuing things that I didn't value before. I won't be as selfish. I won't be as needy. I won't be as insecure. I'll learn to just value things differently. I'll express things differently. I'll calm down. I'll say what I really want to say for the long game. Because I'm dropping weight, I'm gaining wisdom, and my perspective's changing. Guys, I believe in you. I believe that we can do this. I believe he's worth being faithful for. I believe that he's going to produce this in us. And so I just want to make it super practical as you go to groups, because you guys can talk about just how do we do this? How do we stay faithful? How do we encourage each other? How do we keep going even though the reality doesn't look like what we want it to right now? And so here's what I want to give you. 3 places to look to keep being faithful. The first place to look is to look up. And when I said this in J-High, like 3 J-High kids went. It was really funny. Is to look up. Here's what he says. Here's what 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 6, his advice to Christians that are struggling. He says, humble yourselves under the mighty power of God, and at the right time he will lift you up. Give all your worries and cares to God, for he cares about you. I love this because if I internalize it and try to deal with it on my own and I don't look up, I'm going to run back to coping methods. I'm going to run back to justifying and being cynical and all that. But if I'll learn to look up and take my cares, my disappointments to him, it says right here that he cares about me. And so he cares about the things I'm going through. And so if I can learn to look up in my difficulty, it's me learning to allow him in. When I face disappointment, when I face trials, when I face those things that I don't know what to deal with, if I'll look up, man, he's right there saying, I want to help. I care. I'm right there for you. Look up. Second place to look is to look around. Remember that whole thing, like you're the only one and you invented it? Here's what 1 Peter 5, verse 9 says. Stand firm against him, that's the enemy, And be strong in your faith. Remember that your family of believers all over the world is going through the same kind of suffering you are. I love the right kind of suffering. Like, I love the right kind of suffering when it's like because Christians are standing up for what is right. It's another kind of suffering if it's like I did wrong and my phone got taken away. Like, that's a whole other suffering. But when I'm suffering for the cause of Jesus, when I'm suffering for the right things, that's a good suffering. That's a good, like, pain moment because I'm joining this incredible group known as the church. Not just this church, but the church, the family, the followers that have just said, you know what, Jesus is worth everything. I'll suffer. If I have to die for the cause, I'll die for the cause. He's saying that's the family that you're a part of now. And so when you're suffering, you're not suffering alone. Jesus suffered. His family is willing to suffer for him. We can encourage each other. So look around. Maybe this is your practice today is, you're going to get a chance to talk in small group about what you're going through, but don't just wait until your opportunity to talk. Really listen. Really empathize. Really look around and see who the other people in that circle are, because if you'll help them with their problems, your problems won't feel as bad. If you'll really be there and look around and put and really be invested in the people that God's put around you, I'm telling you, that's being faithful. And you'll just feel better. There's so many times that small group leaders come in here and they got all kinds of stuff going on in their personal lives. And they come in here and serve you. They come in here and make it about you. They come in and figure out a way to help you and pray for you. And you know what they walk away with? Joy. They still got problems. They still got things they got to deal with, but it's just something about that when we're able to look beyond ourselves and look around that God uses that, and it's called being faithful. So look around. Third place is to look ahead. Look ahead. As you look up, as you look around, look ahead. I love this in 1 Peter 5, verse 10. In his kindness, God called you to share in his eternal glory by means of Christ Jesus. So after you've suffered a little while, just a little while, he will restore, he will support, he will strengthen you, and he will place you on a firm foundation. All power to him forever. Amen. I love this phrase that 1 Peter uses a lot. It's not here, but he uses this a lot in his letter. He uses this phrase, temporary residence. That's what we are. For those of us in Jesus, we're temporary residents. And so what that means is this life is not the only life. After this life is that eternal where we share in the celebration with Jesus. We get to be with Jesus after this life. And so there's a good look ahead, but he's saying you don't have to wait till heaven for you to experience me restoring you, me strengthening you, me putting you on that firm foundation. It's just a little while. It's just this moment, this temporary moment. If you're having a hard time seeing your problems as temporary, here's my challenge. Start journaling your prayers. Those things that you're going through, ask God. As you look up and you look around, you share with other people, write it down and just keep asking God, keep looking up. And I promise you, if you look at that a couple weeks, a month, a couple months later, you'll go, man, I'm not even in that anymore. I'm not even dealing with that anymore. But what do we usually do? We're on to our next prayer request. We're on to the next thing that's bothering us and giving us difficulty. And so we go, man, where has God in all this? God's like, I've been here the whole time. I just need you to look ahead. I just need you to get outside of this moment and realize that I am still restoring. I'm still fighting for you. I'm still caring for you. And there is a wonderful joy ahead. Keep going. Keep going. Let me pray for you, and then we're going to unpack this in groups. God, thank you so much. Jesus, that you were the example of this, that you were faithful to the point of death. And God, I thank you that that's the requirement, is that we're called to be faithful. Whatever this life throws at us, as we live in our own version of a Greco-Roman culture, help us, God, to not be disillusioned. Help our disappointment cause us to not just cope, but to look up, to look around, and to look ahead. In Jesus' name, amen.